So for menstrual cycle, you need to remember this MFOL. I remember it like MFOL. So this covers all the four stages or all the four phases that are involved in menstrual cycle. So this is how you can remember, that is MFOL. So first is the menstruation phase, second is the follicular phase, third is the ovulatory phase, and the last one is the luteal phase. Luteal phase is also called as secretory phase. So if you remember this much, you can judge the further events by the names itself. So first of all, in this passage it is written that menstrual cycle occurs in female primates. What are female primates? Like monkeys, apes, human beings. Like we know, we have menstrual cycle. That means females in human beings, in monkeys, in apes. In this case we have the menstrual cycle. Like if you remember, in the first chapter we read two cycles, that is menstrual cycle and the estrous cycle. That is, one occurs in female primates and the other one, that is the estrous cycle, that occurs in the non primates. So this is about the female primates. The menstrual cycle occurs in female primates, and this we have already done, that at the time of puberty, the girls, when they get their first menses, that is called as menarche. So in human females, the menstrual is repeated at average interval of about 28 to 29 days. So it varies in all the females. In some it can go to up to 30 days also, but on average it is about 28 to 29 days that menstrual cycle is. Okay, so after that, what is menstrual cycle? The definition is given, that is the cycle of events starting from one menstruation till the next one. That is, when there is one menstruation and when there is next menstruation, that period, that events that occur in between, that constitute the menstrual cycle. So ovulation is when one ovum is released. Okay, so what happens is, during the menstrual cycle there is a release of the ovum or the egg, that is called ovulation. So ovulation, now we are going to study the four phases or the stages, that is, I told you can remember by fall. So we will learn about what happens in during these four stages of the menstrual cycle. So as we did that, this is the menstruation phase. So what happens in this phase is, this is basically of 3 to 5 days, and this is the phase when the girl or the female receives the menses. That means blood flow occurs. This is due to the breakdown of the endometrium of the uterus. So let's come to this chart. uh, if you can see, like here, about one, these are the number of days. So about from the first day to the fifth day, they have shown the menses are occurring. That means the blood flow is occurring. That is what we call menstruation. These are the other things like hormone levels. So during this, these are the ovarian hormones. Let us consider till day 5 only, that is the first phase, that is the menstruation phase. So in this, the level of hormones is almost stable. That means there is no increase or decrease shown. Then ovarian events involve the follicle development. So there is follicle development, like this is the primary follicle. Okay, you can see this is the primary follicle. It is developing, it is getting bigger. The cells around it that are shown by small circles, you can see these are the granulosa cells. So these are multiplying in number, and this follicle is maturing. Okay, so for the first phase, that is the menstruation phase, we need to remember only this much, that it is of 3 to 5 days of duration, and this happens because of the broken endometrium lining of the uterus. The uterus has a lining, that is endometrium, that breaks, due to which blood flow occurs. So this was about the first phase, that is the menstruation phase. Coming on to the next phase, that is the follicular phase. Now in the follicular phase, what happens is, again you can remember it from the name itself, that is follicular phase is something will happen to the follicle, and that is what exactly it says, that follicular phase is when your follicle will start maturing. Like this was the primary follicle, we did in the fifth day also it was the primary follicle, and after this from 5th day to 13th day our second phase, that is follicular phase, is taking place. In this the follicle is developing, primary follicle will develop to secondary follicle and then tertiary follicle and finally to mature follicle. That means follicular phase only consists of the development of the follicles, nothing else we need to mention in this phase. Okay, and the second thing which here it says is that uterus lining of the uterus, that is endometrium, which was broken in the first phase, that is the menstruation phase, that starts regenerating. Okay, it regenerates through proliferation. Because it regenerates through proliferation, that is why this phase is also called proliferative phase. So these are the two main points that you need to mention in your second phase, that is the follicular phase. Next is the ovulatory phase. Again I told you we will remember it by the name itself. Ovulatory phase is the phase of ovulation, that means ovulation will take place, and this phase, as it mentions, it takes at about the 14th day of the cycle. So here you can see that 14th day I have mentioned here, this is ovulation. So ovulation, what happens in ovulation is the mature follicle will release the ovum. So you can see the follicle that got mature, it releases its ovum on the 14th day, which is called ovulation. That means ovulation, what is ovulation? It is the release of ovum, and that is what happens here in ovulation. The ovum gets released from the mature follicle. When we come to the hormones, here one more important thing comes in this phase, that is ovulation, that is LH surge. Because what is LH surge? First of all, that means the peak level of LH. LH is the luteinizing hormone. When this hormone reaches peak level rapidly, it reaches a peak level, you can see a peak is shown over here, that is LH. This is FSH, this also shows a peak level. Similarly, when you come to ovarian hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone, they also show an increase. So this is what happens in ovulation. When there is the release of ovum, there is a rapid increase in hormones. Especially about LH surge you need to mention in this phase. If you are writing it for theory, it is very important to mention about LH surge, that is what occurs during ovulation. So the last phase is the this luteal phase. Now what is luteal phase? Again, by the name itself you remember, luteal phase is about luteum. So what is luteum over here? That marks the corpus luteum. What is corpus luteum? This, first of all, this occurs after ovulation. This is the last phase. This is also called the secretory phase. Now from 15th day it marks, this is the luteal phase. So in this what happens is the corpus luteum develops. Now what is corpus luteum? After ovulation had occurred, so after ovulation, what happens is when the egg is released, the remnant or the remain of the mature follicle, that develops into a degenerating body, which is called the corpus luteum. Now this corpus luteum this secretes a hormone that is progesterone, that is important for pregnancy. Okay, and if the ovum of the female is not fertilized, that means if the girl is not pregnant, so this will degenerate, and the disintegration of this causes the menstrual flow, that is a blood flow, and again the cycle continues. That comes, the blood flow comes, that is menses arrive, that is again the menstruation. So this was the complete menstrual cycle that includes this four stages, that is fall, menstruation, follicular, ovulatory, and the luteal phase. One thing more, why the luteal phase is called secretory phase also, that is because the mucus secretion from the glands occur during this phase. And one more thing about the menopause, just like we did menarche, is the onset of menstruation in females. Similarly, when the female is of 50 years, around this age the female stops menstruating. That means a female cannot be pregnant again. That means she cannot give birth to a child now. That is called menopause. Now, just a few points we can elaborate is during the menstrual phase. So this is a clear cut notes, these are from NCRT itself, so you can take a screenshot. That is the menstrual phase, follicular phase, ovulatory phase, and luteal phase. This is purely NCRT based, and you can also get a help to understand this chart, that is figure 3.9, if you use this